Let's do this. JavaScript girl in a .NET world. Yes. So I have a very special guest who I'm going to bring on stream momentarily. I'm going to bring Justin, aka Shorty, on stream. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
So freaking good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Excited.
Oh my gosh.
Excited.
I feel like I'm in like a whirlwind. So like if I look a little stunned, it's just because I was like just now learning React and now I'm jumping back. Like
context switching.
I know.
That's
I know. But actually you'd be surprised. Learning .NET lately has really helped me understand JavaScript better, if that makes any sense, because chat is like constantly challenging me and they're like, okay, yeah, but how does that work in JavaScript when I'm learning something in C#? And so then I like go back and I look because, you know, I'm not using any frameworks. I'm like, just raw JavaScript. How does this work?
Right.
So it's actually really helps me a lot. I'm loving it. And I would encourage anyone who, if you feel stale in your development, I would definitely say like even if it's just for dabbling and fun, learn like a language or a framework that's like totally just like out of left field for what you're used to. And I think it really, I don't know, freshens things up a bit. So
for sure.
But yeah, that was the weirdest intro ever. Welcome, Shwarty. You want to let people know who you are?
How's it going? I'm Justin Schwartzenberger, aka Shwarty. Most people call me Shwarty. Yeah, I'm me. I've had a long dev journey for a long time.
I know. That's why I'm so excited to bring you on today, because, you know, I've been talking to a lot of my Angular friends, and it's funny how many of them have like a hidden .NET past. Like the super secret, like, yeah, like so many people have come out of the woodwork, my Angular friends, and they're like, I know .NET, Alyssa. And I'm like, what? Like, why does everyone know it? Like everyone. So like, I know Justin from the Angular community, and he's just like, I mean, you're like on web these days, right? Like you don't do anything .NET-y anymore, or do you?
I'm not actively doing anything .NET-y or back end right now currently.
You know what? I've done my time. That means you have secret .NET apps that are still running.
There are definitely some that are still running in production out there. But nothing I'm maintaining right now or working on actively. But, you know, I took that journey, so that knowledge is all still up here.
It's also, I see Layla in the chat. Hey, everybody. It's so good to see chat going wild. I promise I will stop ignoring you. Although they're talking about web forms right now, I'm going to ignore that.
We can talk about that at some point.
I'm a little miffed. Let me tell you why.
Right.
When I was like, hey, friends, I want to learn desktop development, most of my friends, meaning all of them, told me, no, you don't. And then they just kind of like turned away and walked away from me. And so I had to like go beyond the advice of everyone, because I was like, no, really, it sounds super fun. And, you know, there's all these options of like web forms, WinForms, WPF, UWP. And I today was talking to some of those friends, and they're like, yeah, UWP is dead, Alyssa. And I was like, you guys can't keep saying these things to me. Like, it's like, nothing is ever really dead. Okay. So if we want a UWP, we're going to UWP. So that's where
true.
I'm.
I mean, there's Silverlight. That might be dead.
Right. Because it doesn't actually run. I guess you're right. If you can't run it.
But then I'm sure there's a dark corner of the web somewhere where it does run. So, you know, hey, I mean, I don't think nothing really ever dies, right? In technology.
You heard it here first. The dark web runs on Silverlight.
A dark spot of the web. I don't know if the dark web actually runs on it, but, you know, depends on what terminology. I don't know.
Can you tell us, because I was totally blown away when you told me you knew .NET, because I was like, God, does everyone know this stuff? So can you tell me like how that was part of your journey and where you first, I guess, was that when you first started programming, or did you program web and then go into .NET?
No. Okay. So you're asking me to go way back. Okay. Well, first, I'm totally down on that. Like, I've got a long story, so we'll go down that journey. But I was going to get a little dressed up for the .NET.
Oh my God. You have an outfit?
No, just I have this hat, you know, so I was going to wear this kind of my dressed up hat. So .NET being kind of like more professional. I don't know,
Like
Yes,
we
no?
joke, but the first time I was at like, because I'm used to JavaScript, right? Like the show is JavaScript Girl in a .NET world. I had only ever learned web. I'd only ever gone to web conferences. So the first time I went to a .NET based conference, I was like, I remember very vividly, I called my husband. I was like, this is night and day from, I was like, this is because, like we talk about like ngconf. It's a very iconic and very like that vibe is what I was used to. And I just assumed all developer conferences were some sort of subset of ngconf. And everyone was like in like suits or like collars. And I was like, I called my husband. I was like, I'm wearing a hoodie and I don't fit in. Like,
Right.
I was like, what is wrong with these developers? So it was very eye-opening, and I love the hat. Although to me it's
All
like
right.
more like mobster. Like I was like, is .NET like a gang? Like are we?
All right. Well, here I'll give you a little more, a little better analogy. Right. This is my .NET Ward Bell .NET World hat. So I don't know if Ward Bell's past of being active in .NET conferences and in Microsoft conferences. That's where I first saw Ward Bell, and it was amazing because if you know about conferences in Ward Bell, he has the flyest outfits in the entire world when he goes to conferences, right? And that didn't start in Angular conferences. That started in this. Well, I don't know where it started. Technically, you have to ask him. But we would go to these Microsoft conferences, right, for .NET stuff and whatever, the Microsoft stuff. And this cat would walk down the hall and just totally stand out, right? Like it does now. But like you said, like everybody else is very corporate, like dressed up, like it's like this kind of like, I don't know, you're more professional world type of dressing. I don't know how you explain it, right? But there was Ward Bell, like, boom.
Are you ready? I'm gonna share my screen, and it's gonna be epic, just so everyone can understand. When I think of Ward Bell, like this is like you see like the fur and like this is like the iconic. These are golden shimmery pants and gold boots. Like this is who Ward is. And like I remember like when I asked him, I said, I was like, Ward, why do you do this? I said, I love it. I'm all for it. I will get on board with it. Like, but why do you do this? And this was at a JavaScript conference, not even a .NET conference. And he goes, it like really helps developers break out of their shell. It makes me more approachable to them because they can come up to me and talk to me about my outfit first. And he goes, and that starts a conversation. And he was like, and so for me, I was like, wow, this guy is really impressive. Cannot believe he had the balls to do it at a .NET conference though, because I was like feeling shame in my hoodie, right? So
yeah. No, you would see him walking in the halls. You would just be like, "There's Ward, right?
There's Ward."
Who is that? It was so cool to like find, move into Angular and start going to these Angular conferences, and there's Ward, and then like that bridge that gap. That was so cool. So
yeah, Salt saying same with my tattoos. Yeah, like the feeling like, should I be in a suit? What is happening?
Right.
So that was, I had no idea. Like, I'm assuming then that like John Papa and Deborah Karada and all of these iconic Angular people also have .NET pasts then? Like,
yeah, as far as I know, that they were all, part of that and doing that, they all have courses and things like that on that content. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think a lot of us probably started, back there, I think there's this period of transition. I do want to get to where I started, right? But before we get there, really, I think there's this transition of like, you're in the .NET world, you're maybe using that, the Microsoft ecosystem, and you're doing web development in there with web forms or whatever you're doing. And then there's a start to move to doing more and more JavaScript, right? And then it was things like Knockout JS and other things, and obviously jQuery and things like that to start bridging the gap of data management and two-way binding inside of your web pages, and you happen to be working in the .NET ecosystem, so you're doing web forms or whatnot. And then Angular JS comes along, and it's like, okay, now this is even more, and now we're into single page apps and things like that. And I think and then when Angular really came along, to and beyond, and adoption of TypeScript, then you have this bridge of common kind of way you're writing code for classes and things like that. And I think that's, a lot of us from the .NET world that we're doing web development, transition to that for single page app and framework stuff.
Do you like when you hear about things like Blazor, does it make you excited or does it make you nervous? Because like you're now, at least from what I see, you're now in, like, you've committed, right? You're in the web. You're like, I'm here now. The web exists. It's cool.
Right.
Like,
Well,
and so like Blazor is kind of like the .NET way of like entering the web scene, but staying in that .NET ecosystem. So does that, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, so I've been out of touch with .NET for a little bit. So my understanding is Blazor is basically like Razor, but in the browser. So it's like
I
extension
know
of Razor.
it uses Razor. Like that's their HTML files or whatever. And then it's also like, it's essentially like, I'm gonna butcher it, the .NET way of webbing now. So like instead of like having an Angular front end and a .NET back end, you'd have a Blazor front end.
Right.
And so, but I just hear a ton of buzz about it, and I have friends like Ed, who's in the chat, who like does a Blazor Power Hour, and he's just like, it's super exciting. And when I first tried it, I'll pull up the app later today if we have time, but when I first tried it, it was one of the easier things. And maybe that's just because I come from a web world. Like it was one of the easier things for me to be like, oh, you use this in this way. But I don't know if, you know, with having a .NET past like you do, does it call out to you? Do you do you feel its pull?
It does. It does. I mean, it's like I think like one of the exciting things about it was C# and C# coming in the mix. So let's go way back in the day, right? So I really started my programming journey with C, and that's where I started learning, you know, how to code back in the day. And it was very much like, you know, terminal console app, C code, that just learning regular programming practices and a language and how that all works. Because that was kind of there at the time. It was a really long time ago.
Is C# like, because like in my mind, C++ is like gaming, C# is like .NET, and then like you say C and I'm like, I'm lost. I don't know where that is. Where is that is that like a lower level version of C# or no?
Yeah, C++, yeah, C++, C#. So C is like really like kind of lower foundation, and then C++ was C++, right? And it got better,
okay,
right? Like
okay.
more and more functionality and things like that. And then C# was like, let's take C++ and do this new kind of experience around it, this new API and this new, you know, way syntax and things like that, right? Yeah. And so really started with C because that was there, and then started learning C++, and then really got into the web at that point. Like once I started doing programming, then it's like, okay, my big draw for the web, and you know, I've talked about this before, is the fact that like the visual side of it, right? Like I love programming. I love, you know, figuring out business logic and all that stuff. But the excitement of a UI is just, it's so compelling, right? And so when I'm sitting there writing, you know, console apps in C or something, or C++, and I'm like, this is just not my jam. I'm like, I need something more. I need more drive and desire and excitement. And then the web, and it's like, that's it, right? And then all this promise of all these things you could do with it, visually, animations, all these things, and the fact that you could deploy and get, like, I'm a big like instant gratification needer. I don't know how to explain it, right? Like, and so like I really want to get to the end game, right, really fast, right, or get to something. And so for me, I want to produce a UI, produce some functionality, and with the web, I can do that and then deploy it and then see it and run it, and people can get to it like right away, right? There's the barrier, and I don't know how it is now, but I know back in the day it was like, you know, building a desktop app. There's a lot of steps you have to go through, you're right, and it was a long process or journey before you get to that point of like anybody could be consuming your app and testing it and checking it out. And so the web was like, I can put it up there. I can give you a link. As long as you can get online, dial up or whatever, you can hit it, right? And it's like, we can have this interaction right away.
No, I feel you on that, especially because I'm kind of going backwards. At least a lot of people say I'm going backwards because I started in the web and now I'm dabbling with desktop apps, but it's a different ball game, like for sure. And honestly, testing and like because I've never been like, yes, we must write tests. We're very much the hot take because we live on the front end. So like instead of just writing a test of does that button work, we're like, it works. Like And so then to write like a test for the UI and like, because that's primarily where we live, it seems very tedious and an extra head. But like whenever you go backwards and you're like looking at desktop development and not having that instant gratification of the UIs, it's right there. It's living, it's breathing. Like, the builds or, the build times or waiting on something because there's so many times that even with the builds or the new hot reload that sometimes doesn't work. I'm like, that's not calling the new functionality. So I see now where like this came from and why so many people are like, yeah, I live by tests. I'm like, yeah, I see that now. So, but Ed, I wanted to shout out to Ed real quick. There's some questions in the chat about what Blazor even is. And Ed is now in the chat. So Ed, you should tell chat what Blazor is, because I totally butchered the definition. Anyways, back to you, Justin.
No, I think that's a interesting point that you bring up. Now I'm thinking on it, like, the testing thing, right? Is it not feeling the need to test so much for the web because you can deploy a change and a fix right away, right? Like, so if it didn't work and you're essentially testing in production and somebody's like, oh, it doesn't work, you're like, okay, I'll just push in a new change and we're up and running. Everybody's got it, right? Whereas in a desktop app, you're like, and even when you're talking about like mobile app or whatnot, you got to go through a process to get your application delivered to somebody. So if there's a problem in it, right? Like to get everybody updated is a bit of a challenge. So maybe it's like, feels more important.
It's a huge challenge. And I mean, my husband used to work for a company who built software for hotels, and they had it running on iPads, they had it running on computers, they had it running on phones. And so getting, that latest fix, whatever it is, to all the rooms in that hotel was sometimes literally a manual process of having someone fly out, depending on what the software was. So, yeah, I feel you on that. And it's a whole other world. And I do wonder if it's because of that just paradigm shift with the web where, testing takes less of, it's still important and it depends on your application and what you're building, but it takes less of because just getting your stuff is like, okay, deploy, like,
right.
And it's there. So, oh, bye, Layla. Thanks for hanging out. I think she's in a courtroom right now, if I read chat correctly. So I like that you got to pop in.
Awesome.
So you started in C and you moved a bit into the .NET world and you were like, hello, web. Welcome to my life. Did you ever fill the pool towards like mobile or desktop specifically, or were you just like web?
All right, so I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit, right?
Oh, no.
Before I got into a .NET web world, I got into a PHP web world.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me because
all right.
I dabbled a bit in PHP, but I didn't know it was webby. It's webby?
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so really, I back in the day, one of the places I worked at was a ISP. So for everybody that's younger, it's an internet service provider. Used to be where you get like dial-up service, or when things got really fancy, we'd have DSL, right? But this is how we got on the internet back in the day. You'd have an internet service provider. I guess you still have internet service providers today. But I worked there doing tech support. And we had an internal system, a billing system that was all built on PHP. And so that's kind of where I was like, okay, well, I want to, build applications for the web. And this is where I'm kind of learning it, right? It's right there. So that's kind of how I got into PHP and then started building internal tools that we use. I ended up running our retention department there. And so I built all these internal tools to help us maintain and keep customers and things like that, all based on PHP and the web, right? And connecting to our backend databases and things like that. And so that was really like my full, really rich, web introduction, web application type of thing was in PHP.
I don't remember hating PHP. We had a class where in web dev, because Ed was saying that PHP was a time he'd like to forget, but I had this class where I had to write the backend in both PHP and Python simultaneously. So like we had to write two different backends, and like they did it on purpose so we would compare the languages and see the differences. But I don't remember hating it. I don't know. It doesn't seem. Was it hard? Was it awful? Like, do you remember like not liking PHP, or was it just fine?
Well, you know me, like I don't really like look at anything as like awful or terrible, right? Like I try and kind of as an outlook on everything, right? So for me, like PHP, there was challenges in it, right? There was things that like, if you're sitting there and going to have an option and comparing, frameworks or platforms or languages and trying to make a decision, then yeah, there's probably other things you'd want to go with over PHP at times, right? But when that's there and that's the application you're working in, or that's the language that's based on something that you're diving into, then you roll with it and you build with it, right? And you learn it and you learn the ins and outs and you deal with it. I mean, same thing. We have it in every language, right? JavaScript, we certainly have it. Maybe not C#, but probably C# they have it, right?
You're like, C#'s perfect and everyone loves it.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. It is pretty amazing. You asked me earlier if I miss it, and I do miss it.
Catherine was saying that if you look in the WordPress world, the PHP is still alive. And Eli was saying that he got started similarly to how you did and helped run an ISP in the late 90s. We did website dev for local clients. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know people joke about, at least JavaScripters tend to joke about, it's so funny, the politics between like the JavaScript world and the .NET world. So like normally you see like a true hardcore JavaScripter will be like, ooh, C#, that's gross. Like, and a true .NETer will be like, JavaScript, there's no types. How could you do that to yourself? Right. So like there's this kind of like back and forth vibe. But like I've been loving getting into C#. It's just so fun. It is hard. There's times when like I was trying to Layla was on stream with me and we were working on my console app, and we just wanted to get these methods calling whenever you selected something from a drop down in the console, and a drop down, and because we couldn't get the types like matching, like it was like a struggle. And like that's something in JavaScript, like it wouldn't care if like the functions that we were calling had the same signature. It'd just be like, like so it is different and it's a little slower for me, but I'm not hating it. So
some would say they're excited about the fact that C# makes you do that, right?
Makes you do that.
Because it ensures that you're using what you intended to use, right, with your code to a degree.
Yep.
We get that with TypeScript now. That's what's so amazing about TypeScript is essentially bringing that strong typing to JavaScript. So if you want that world, then you have a way to do that. Yeah.
And honestly, now that I'm used to this Angular world with TypeScript, and it's just how it is. Going into C# is a lot easier, I think, than if I'd done it before we made that switch into, like I think it would have been everything's foreign and I'm totally lost. So I feel like there's a lot of similarities now. And I feel like if you are a .NETer, I don't even know if that's a word, but we're saying it. If you're a hardcore .NETer and you're like, hey, what's over on the web side of life? I think you wouldn't hate Angular with TypeScript. I think it'd be very akin to what you're used to. So.
Well, and I think there's also like the potential to bring a lot of those patterns and things over. I mean, when we talk about, the .NET world and things, you think about things like view models and things like that, right? And I use that a lot in in my Angular development, right? Thinking about, I'm building a view model for a screen, right? And so rather than thinking about individual pieces or parts, can I think about, here's the set of data as a view model for this particular screen that I'm building, and it's doing it in Angular, but I'll name things like, this is the view model, this is this view model, that sort of thing. And
even things like, does React have dependency injection? Is that a concept? I don't know if all JavaScript frameworks have that concept, but it was funny, like hearing my .NET friends talking about dependency injection. I was like, oh, hey, is that the same as mine? Yeah, I get that too. So
well, I don't know what it's like now in the .NET world, but back when I was doing dependency injection, you would find a dependency injection solution, and then you'd have to do some registration with your things that you're going to dependency inject, right? Like in Angular world, we just put out injectable and things like that, and it kind of does it for us, right? But when I did the C# thing, there was some dependency injection frameworks that I have to use that you'd be orchestrating, like, these are the things that I want to allow to be injected, and then you go and you'd use them, right? And inject, Eli mentioned inject, use that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know what the injection story is like now. I think there was some stuff with
that's confusing because it's not like a built-in concept. You have to use something that,
I don't know. It might be now, right? It might be now, and like MVC. I think .NET MVC had some stuff that was going down that path. And again, I've been out of it for a while, so maybe they have stuff that's a lot easier for dependency injection or more baked in. But yeah, at the time it was stuff like Ninject and things like that.
C++.
Dependency injection was a challenging thing to wrap my head around when I first got into it. But once it unlocked and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But maybe part of that
look at dependency injection was Angular, or what did you work with it before that?
C#.
C#.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I did when we were doing Angular JS stuff and TypeScript was becoming a thing, and started doing all the Angular JS and TypeScript to bring over, because coming from the .NET world, right, to bring over that feeling of C# and that ability to, and at that time too, it was also about like ES5 whatever versions, 4.3.7, I don't know, whatever, and where they're like, there's a future, and how do you get ready for the future, and TypeScript bridged that gap and allowed you to write classes and things like that, right? And all these things that were familiar in the .NET and C# world, bring that over to the Angular world, and
I mean,
good.
So you remember the day when JavaScript didn't have classes?
I do.
Because to me, I'm like, that used to not be there. I don't know. Like, it's really like that time in my life was fuzzy because I was developing, but not really. Like, and so I'm like, wait. And whenever I started really using JavaScript, it had classes. Like, that was a thing. So I'm like,
this is really going to bake your noodle. I remember the day when we used to have to use. There was this there's some Microsoft specific JavaScript code that allowed you to do AJAX calls or AJAX calls. And so you'd have to use this, like, I forget what it was. It was like Microsoft, maybe it was like Microsoft AJAX or something like that. And like, that's how you would do these asynchronous calls in the browser way back in the day, before like jQuery became a thing, and before everything became
before jQuery. Hang on, we got to pause on that one. In my mind, it was like the web jQuery, like the web jQuery. So like, what is this time span before that was a thing? Was that a long time? Was that a short time? Like, that people were writing web stuff, and then like, you're just like raw JavaScripting? Like, oh my.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was so good because the browsers were so helpful to render everything correctly. Like,
really?
And
are you being sarcastic?
Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. Sorry. Okay. Do I do it well? I'm not. Sometimes I'm not really good at being sarcastic.
I was like, either we need to go back to that, or he's being facetious. I can't tell.
Oh man, he'd write JavaScript, and it was just so hard to get it, right, or accomplish things back in the day.
Was it because like you didn't have any like error messaging, or very little? Was that why? And so you didn't know where things were going wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the mix, right? You'd get something, you'd do something that wouldn't work, and you'd either not get an error message, or you get something that is like this stack that you're like, I don't even know where to begin. Right? It's something I did. I don't know what it is though. How do I fix it? How do I get out of this mess? I don't know. Okay, and that's what was so appealing about jQuery, is like it started wrapping up these things and providing you this ability to do these things that like kind of squirreled away those problems, right? It's like, oh my gosh, cool. Now I can just get back to focusing on building apps and building for the web, and not worry about, like, I don't know, low level engineering in the browser. So
no, I to me, I really feel like I'm spoiled in a way with the way that JavaScript is now, and the way the web works now, because some of the horror stories I've heard from friends who were doing things before I entered the scene, I'm like, you had to do what to get what working? Like,
right.
But I wonder, do you think we're ever going to see like TypeScript go away because JavaScript kind of works that way now? Like, do you think that's like in our near future, or is that like a pipe dream?
I mean, if I could predict the future, I might not be on the show. I don't know, but
listen, I want you to tell me where JavaScript's going. That's all I need.
Okay, here's my hot take on TypeScript, which I don't even know if it's a hot take anymore because it's been out for so long, right? But I used to always tell people, I'm like, I have this discussion, and people are like, I don't know if I want to do TypeScript. What's this TypeScript craziness? I love my JavaScript, blah 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 blah, right? I used to say like, look, TypeScript, it's a superset, right, of JavaScript, and it's it's just doing some stuff on top of it. And ultimately it's transpiling down to JavaScript. So at the end, in one side you're writing TypeScript, but on the other side, you're getting JavaScript out. And at the end of the day, like, let's say TypeScript goes away. Cause this was like a big thing back in the day. Or it was like, I don't know if I want to adopt TypeScript because it's not a big thing. Yeah. What if Microsoft decides to ditch it? That sort of thing. And it's like, okay, but it's not like C# or PHP or something like that. It's literally just doing some stuff and then producing JavaScript. So at the end of the day, if they stop making TypeScript, you build everything into your JavaScript and then just pick up from there in a JavaScript.
You just grab that,
right?
Yeah.
So I never look at it in terms of a all or nothing, or do I have to be concerned about that? It's like, okay, it's giving me tooling right now. Let's ride with it. And at the end of the day, if something goes south or turns sour, then hey, we have a way out, right? Like we're not.
I think that's the absolute hardest part about learning .NET for me, because it's exactly what Justin just said about in this JavaScript world. Like, let's say we don't want to do Angular anymore, or let's say we want to do Angular and React side by side, right? Crazier stories have been said, and it all goes down to JavaScript. And at the end of the day, it's all turtles. But in .NET, I've got these friends who are like, oh my God, I got this like history of .NET by Beautiful Silicon Orchid last week. And he was telling me about how things started with Classic. And then it went to, I think I'm going to butcher it, but it was like ASP.NET. And then there was like ASP.NET MVC. And then there was like .NET Standard, and there was .NET Core. And then there, like all of these, like this journey of .NET. And you've got all of these different frameworks or languages that like are on top of these different stacks. And some of them are still being used by, like companies out there in the wild. Some of them have, lifetime support guarantees. Some of them are dead in the water right now, even though they're the latest version in that line or that tree that they grew on. And so to me, I'm like, it's I'm like going from AngularJS to Angular, right? It wasn't the easiest thing to do, but there was a path. And so it's a very foreign concept. And it's a very interesting, political waters to enter into, because there's a lot of like heartache and there's a lot of like pain when people hear about these different new things coming out because of experiences they've had with like, there is no migration path from that. Like, right. Like it's just, you're killing the thing I'm using. And so I think, I guess I've been, again, blessed to live in this JavaScript world where, like you said, like, okay, well, then just go down to JavaScript, take those bits, and then move on with your life. Right. So, yeah.
Right.
Oh, Fuel saying, but Wasm will replace JavaScript, right? My first experience with Wasm was at, Google has this conference that they hold. It's like the Google conference. And I was at it. I can't even think of it. Their developer conference. And I was at it, and these devs who work for Google were like, Wasm is the future, and it's so much faster and it's so much more performant. And so, and I was like, what are they talking about? Like, and that was my first introduction to it. And so is that a thing? Like, is it really our future? Like, could we ever just do Wasm? Like, it seems hard to imagine a world without JavaScript. So I don't know. I think that's very interesting. Oh yeah, Google I/O. Thank you, Ed. You're so smart. Yes, it was I/O, obviously.
I/O. Yeah. I mean, things are going to live on. I mean, I think that that's the cool thing about it is like we have this buffet of choices, right? It's challenging at times because you have to choose, right? But you have that option to choose, which is cool, right? And you have that option for those things to live. And then things like, open source things are the things that really help to build our confidence that it's going to be around. It's the same sort of thing like with Angular, right? It's like, what if they decide to stop working on Angular? Well, the source code is open source, so you just pull down, fork it, and then go on with your journey. And if you need to make tweaks or updates, you can do it, right? So like that's the cool thing. And I believe, is .NET open source?
The latest bit, Ed, correct me, but I'm pretty sure the latest, like whatever. It's not even called Core anymore. I think it's just called It's just called .NET, and I do believe that it's open source. But correct me if I'm wrong. Yep, he's saying it is. Cool. Yeah. I did it. I remembered a thing.
When I was not finishing my journey, but going on a different path and leaving .NET for the time being or whatever. I think that was around the time when it was open sourcing and things like that. And that's really compelling too, because that was, one of those concerns before was like, I'm invested in .NET, but Microsoft is driving the future of it. And what if they silverlight it, right? Or what if something like that, right? What do you do, right? How do you decide to go all in on this sort of thing? And so to me, when I see that they open source it, it's like, okay, yeah, it would suck if they were no longer building it right now. I'm relying on getting stuff out the door from them. But at the same time, I'm not handcuffed with what do I do now? Do I need to rebuild my entire application? I mean, technically I could just fork the repo and then ride with it. And then if I wanted to add more features, we could do it. I could do it, right? Or a team can do it or whatever. So
it's weird to me because, again, coming from this JavaScript world where like everything's on NPM, everything is open source. Like, so to think about, like, I really truly do not understand how it would work if it wasn't open source. Like, how could you use a language that you didn't actually have a copy of? I guess maybe it was like transpiled in such a way that it was unreadable. I don't know. Like, that's the part where I'm like, what? How did it even work before it was open source?
Yeah.
So that's, to me, it's a very foreign concept.
That's that world.
Yeah.
Man, you talked about NPM. We can talk about NuGet a little bit. I tweeted out all these acronyms, right, of all the things that we can talk about. It instantly, all these things come back of like this thing we were talking earlier about like getting the application out. I did want to touch on back in the day, like one of my first desktop applications, I believe, started in WinForms, and it was this touchscreen app to do shipping, doing shipping fulfillment, right? So it would be this touchscreen app that would go into this fulfillment center that would pull up shipments, the next shipment to do, and they could click on the screen to do, interaction to get ready for the shipping label of that shipment, and then fulfill it, package up the shipment, move on to the next one, right? And it started with WinForms, I believe, was the app, and then used Click Once for Click Once deployment. I don't know if you've heard of that, if that is even a thing still in .NET, but it was this like auto deploy process that Microsoft had that was kind of cool, that you would just build your app, and then other, who had their app would get notified the next time they launch it that there's a new version and would update it. Almost like a like in the web world right now with service workers and things like that. If you think about like how you could like prompt a new app load.
I just pulled it up. I mean, it looks like it's in the docs still. So I'm wondering if that means it's still alive and kicking. So that's
yeah. Click Once, all one word, capital C, capital O. Yep, that's it. Yeah, so use that. And that was actually pretty cool. There's a little hoops to go through and stuff like that. And you have to like sign the application and things. But basically, it provided a way where when somebody runs your app, it would prompt them that there's a new version, and you could auto install it, or it could do that. And
that's awesome.
These are sort of things, and I'm sure that probably like your excitement over getting into the .NET world and desktop things, like these are the same sort of kind of draws that got me excited in terms of doing that type of world, was like thinking about that web stuff of our deployment and those sort of things that we get out of the web. And you're like, okay, is there such thing in the desktop world? And like, how can I bring this excitement from here, but now do it in a desktop app that you have a little more control over, because you X out the browser, right? And you have full control. So, yeah.
If you kept within the boundaries of Click Once, I think it was great to deploy code.
I fully agree with that statement. Because if you stepped out a bit, it was rough. Because anytime, and for going back to the ISP days and stuff, I mean, if you have to go and get on a call and talk to somebody that's using your software and try and debug and troubleshoot,
I cannot, because I was on a stream with some of my team members from another team at my company, and they were showing me a product that we have called Test Studio, and there's like a Chrome extension, and it can like record your users everything while they're working. And imagine debugging with a client over the phone. Like when I live in this world, like I'm like, what? You did what?
Right.
Oh God.
Click no to the left. Click. I don't know. I don't know what you're seeing. Just describe what you're seeing on the screen. I don't know. Yeah, the gray button. And the win forms are all gray. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, Aaron was joking. I'm assuming I'm going to bring back C++ ATL server. This .NET Framework web service won't last. Oh my gosh. I saw on your tweet you mentioned something called WCF. I've never heard of that. What is that? Is that desktop?
Windows Communication Foundation, I believe is what it was.
Foundation.
So WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation. I don't know if these are still things, so don't quote me. Like somebody who's in the .NET world right now, like let everybody else know if this is like a thing. But this was a thing back when I was doing it, right? And WCF. So it was the way to kind of do APIs, right? So REST-based type of APIs, right?
For your WP. Okay, now that sounds familiar. Okay.
I think it actually supported like REST and SOAP and other things like that, right?
They're all saying WCF RIP. What replaced it? You just WPF now? Like what? Oh, Microsoft deprecated it. Why? They washed with SOAP.
Have you ever done anything with SOAP, Alyssa?
I have, but it was so far long ago. But so that's like essentially it's like another. It's instead of REST, you would use SOAP, right? Like it's
instead of like JSON, you would use SOAP. You would package up your data in like 37 lines of what looks like HTML tags for one piece of data, and then you repeat that for every piece of data you had. Probably being a little hard on SOAP. But SOAP was not that. I mean, it was funny. It was decorating your data package with a lot of extra information to describe it. And so, yeah, it was a standard for a long time. And it was rough when you had to integrate with third parties SOAP and read it and figure out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it looks like Ed was saying minimal APIs, which I know if any of you are excited about .NET Conf, woo, it's coming up next week. And some of the new announcements, some of the new hot things. I was on a stream last week with Layla and she was actually playing around with minimal APIs. So I'm assuming that is the hottest API bit that you instead of WCF or SOAP, or I guess chat was saying that they've replaced it WCF like several times over. So whatever the other things were before that, it looks like that's the latest goodness. So
the compelling thing about it back then was like it was very similar to like MVC, and it was very you would decorate, and from our JavaScript world, if you use like Nest.js, I always forget if it's Next or Nest. I think it's Nest.js. But it's this concept that like you would, write your endpoints, right? You write your server, you write your endpoints, you decorate them with get, post, put, those sort of things, and kind of declaratively set up your API code in a way that then you could, provide different providers or whatnot to do
this one.
Like I want to return SOAP, I want to return.
I think you're talking about this one, right? For Nest.
Yeah, I think it's Nest that looked really similar to me. Yeah, where you have these controllers and you would decorate them with decorators to define like what that class is going to do, what that class method is going to do. And it was easy. It helped to do this, core setup of your API endpoints and backing logic and things like that. You'd have like, models that it returns, request and response models and things like that. And it was just this paradigm of setting it up that made it kind of easier to sculpt that. And it sounds like maybe this minimal API or things like that. It's like, the new experience, like, getting to that where you have other ways to do it. But WCF was how we did it back in the day.
And so WCF was tied with WPF. And then ASP.NET MVC, I've actually heard good things about. Like
I get excited about this. So
hot take.
Yeah, no. So like in a good way though, like I love your title of your stream being based on a song, right? I'm assuming it's based on a song, right?
It is.
Yeah. So back in my MVC days, I had a blog based on a song title. My blog was "I Want My MVC," and so like I want my MTV.
Oh my god, I love it so much. I actually tried going there. It's not up. Chat, don't even enter the URL.
I deaded it.
You did.
It's probably for sale.
Did you say deaded?
I deaded it.
Is that a thing? Is that a saying? Do I need to adopt it? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it may not be around. I don't know if people are still saying it. I don't know. But yeah.
So it's not a Justin thing though. It's a pop culture thing that I just didn't know about. As long as I thought maybe you invented it just now. So
no, there are some things I invent, but that's not one of them. I borrowed that.
Oh, so Eli was saying that ASP.NET MVC was the golden days of server-side web dev. So, and if you ask some of my friends, it's still pretty fun. So I don't know why, but anyone who did ASP.NET MVC, they get like this smile on their face when I bring it up. And I don't know. Maybe we should go back and try it. Like, because I hear good things about it, and I don't know. I think that means either the community was good, the experience was good. I don't know. Something was going on good with that. So did you do that for a company, or was that for your just for your own stuff when you were ASP.NET?
Yeah, it was for a company and for my own stuff. I mean, I loved it too. So kind of everything I do is a mix of both. Like it creeps out. I do stuff wherever I'm at, and then it creeps into my free time as well. But yeah, MVC was really cool. It was this, opinionated approach for doing web form stuff, right? It had a very Angular-like. You had these controllers that were like your classes for your, pages or components or page parts and things like that. And you would be writing this class code to manage your view model and your interactions and things like that. And then you'd be wiring that up in the template to do.
If you don't do it this way, what are you doing? I guess because that's like you're saying,
that is the real question, isn't it? What are you doing if you don't do it this way?
I really can't imagine like what it doesn't everything do this? Like what if you're not MVC, you're in one file like React? I don't know. Like what's the alternative? You just do whatever wherever. I really don't understand how you cannot MVC, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
Although I guess there are other
what MVC stands for.
This was model view controller, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody uses that, right? Like, no?
Yeah, it's the MVC pattern, right? Like that's what that is. And so like Angular, it has an MVC pattern concept sort of thing, right? Where the controller is in the latest Angular is a component class, right? But in back AngularJS, it was controller. And then you have your model, which is your data model, structure, your view model, that sort of thing. View being your markup, right? And it's bridging those three together to have a framework that runs that platform, that runs that and binds all that together for you. And then you can just isolate and construct separately those pieces.
Eli was saying that ASP.NET Web API kind of replaced MVC back in .NET 4 days, but I think the products have been brought back under the MVC brand. So I've heard of I think, isn't there like an MVC or there's something else like another popular pattern. And I've heard of that one being used sometimes in web frameworks. But as far as from what I've experienced so far, like it feels like MVC is like the way I don't know. It's the agreed upon pattern, whether you're in the web or you're not. So, Mvvm. I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
Yes, chat's like, yeah, there you go. Well, that one's so it's model view model. What? Anybody? What does that one stand for?
I think that sounds familiar.
Because I honestly I need to do a show on it because like where I just walk through the different architectures of both because I don't know. From what I've seen and heard, it's like you just MVC. That's what you do. You just kind of move on with your life.
So there's this concept of like you have your model, which is your data, right? And you're probably going to get that model from an API call or something, right? But by the time you use it in your view, you need a view model, right? So let's say you've got an account with, 13 orders, right? And your screen is only showing the order details of one, right? Your view model is really just the order. Maybe it's like the order summary, right? So your view model is just the data you need for the view. Your backing model is actually all that data, right?
Eli Lucas was saying that MVVM is what Knockout and OG Angular made popular by following patterns that came from WPF or Silverlight. And it's like 4 letters, but it's still 3 things because it's model, view, and then like you're saying view model. So yes, that's why it sounds familiar, because we were doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still, we have these patterns that we do that, like you may not know you're doing it, but if you wanted to put a name to it, you could put a name to it, right? Like we did this in Angular and things like that. You think about like in Angular, let's say you have, you're doing state management like NGRX or something, and you load data and you have, the full data in your state, but you're using a selector to only select what you want for your view model, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're, mapping it down. But then you can go and say, well, I'm going to grab and do something like GraphQL and kind of eliminate the model part, right? And you're just building your view model from your actual query at that point of what you need. And yeah.
Can I get your just personal opinion on GraphQL real quick?
Love it.
Like as a site, you love it. Okay, cool.
I wish I had more opportunities to use it.
Okay.
But I always end up in situations that are not using it. But man, I'm a big fan. But it's that problem, right, that it solves of saying like, look, when I build a REST endpoint, the client that I'm building for it may not need all that data, right? So ideally, if I build a front end client or any client, and I say I want to show this piece of data for my view model, it'd be great if I could just request that piece from the back end, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
I just have, like I've seen other people use it. My husband's actually using it on a client project right now, and it's different. It's just different. And so I was like, I trust you as a developer. So if you if you say it's worth learning, then
I mean, I think like any of this stuff always worth learning, right? It's always things that you can have in your tool belt. You can learn things, even if you don't use it, you can learn for other approaches and things. So that's always good. Yeah. But I think it always comes down to like, are you going to have an opportunity to use it, right? Like, I've spent a lot of time with GraphQL learning and things like that, and I'm excited about it, but I haven't had an opportunity to put it into practice in a lot of places. And so as a result, it's like kind of, I don't know, how much time do I really am I going to get to spend with it because I'm not using it or that sort of thing.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Data.
Chat mentioned that. Chat. And then Ed was saying that it's basically GraphQL with extra steps. What is OData? What do you know what that is?
Yeah. I believe that was WCF had support for that too, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of this ability to select what you want, right? You're saying like, I want to hit this endpoint, but I only want this segment of data that endpoint is providing, right? Yeah.
Okay, I see. Their data was Microsoft stuff.
We have so many things that are exciting to talk about. I still have like half of the things are still out there.
I know. Yeah, no, because I was actually looking at your list again. Signal R. I'm confused.
Love me some Signal R.
Isn't that is that a .NET thing? I'm confused.
Yes. So that's like Socket.io. Do you ever done Socket.io? It's like real-time collaboration, open up sockets. Signal R
I just didn't
in the .NET world provides that.
I've heard of Signal R, but I thought it was like a webby thing. I didn't know it was a .NET-y thing.
Yeah, it's .NET-y thing.
Oh, okay. So what do
is
you
that
use
your term or is that pop culture .NET-y?
That's Alyssa.
That's Alyssa, all right. I like it.
But what do you use Signal R for? What were you doing with it?
So, the common thing would be like chat. Right? So you got something like a chat app and you're like real-time communication. Or, anything that like you want to open a socket and have, instant communication to pushing out to different clients, right? So they'll do like a chat app or like stock quotes, right? Stock quotes is another good. It's the to-do of sockets, right? I've got my stock quotes on the screen and they're updating live from some other source and it's pushing to me and updating my browser and telling me like, here's the latest, right? Sort of thing.
Okay.
And so, yes, David Fowler,
David Fowler.
SignalR, and Damien Edwards. Holy crap. Wow, we're going back. I love it. I love it.
I mean, I've heard of David Fowler. I haven't heard of Damien Edwards.
Yeah.
And I've heard of using SignalR for chat apps, but I did not realize it was a Microsoft thing. So Damien Edwards, I'm assuming, is like as big of a name as David Fowler, I guess, from the .NET world.
Depends on what circles you run in, I guess. So
yeah.
I don't know.
You're like,
in the .NET world, I mean, I knew those two cats. Yeah, they were. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you like know them? You're like hip with all these cool
Well,
people?
no, I mean, no, like, I mean, I've been to conferences and stuff, but like,
yeah.
I guess you should ask the question, like, do they know me? And I would say no. So like, that's the kind of relationship it is. Like, I know of them. They probably don't know of me. So that's fine.
Oh, that's
but
funny.
yeah, like, I mean, it's just like anything in whatever tech stack you're in, right? And you start finding these things that people are creating or, and then they're posting about it and they're sharing content on it. Then they become like, you have this, remote association with them that you kind of feel like you know them, right?
No, absolutely. You're like, I know them, and then you're like,
wait. Right.
I mean, like, not like, no, I don't get coffee with them every Tuesday,
right.
but
right. We don't share an Uber, but I know that they created SignalR, and I read a bunch of their articles, and I probably interacted with them on the chat, for SignalR and stuff like that. Yeah.
So Aaron was saying that some devs hate anything Microsoft and love everything Facebook, and the Microsoft stuff inspired the Facebook stuff. I guess that would imply that, like, because we're talking about SignalR and how it was a Microsoft thing, like, there's not a competing SignalR that is under the Meta brand now, right? Like, is there?
So like SignalR basically wrapped up like all the socket stuff that you need to do real-time interaction under the hood, so that you didn't have to worry about it. And then you could write in a .NET world, like C# and things like that. You could do hubs and things like that to set up your real-time communication without having to do the lower level plumbing, right? And that's a lot of things with like .NET and things like that, is that it's trying to do that. It's trying to abstract away the metal, the bare metal stuff. So you don't have to worry about it. And you can just say, go do this. And you can focus on the app building, right? So SignalR was this way that you could set up hubs, right? Which are your main, rooms or whatever. And then you could have clients that would connect to the hubs. And under the hood, one of the cool things at the time was that sockets weren't completely supported everywhere in all the browsers and things like that. So under the hood, it would flip to like polling or sockets, right? So if you had sockets, it would do socket connection.
If it was supported.
If it didn't, it would do polling, and you wouldn't, again, as a developer, you wouldn't have to worry about it.
You didn't have to worry about that. Oh, that would be nice. Yeah. Okay. Wow, so that's a blast from the past. Like, you saying sockets not supported everywhere, like, I was like, oh my God, that was a thing, right? Like, you had to worry about that. Ed like summed up perfectly what we're talking about with I know where they live, but they don't know I know.
Pretty much, right?
Like, oh God, yes, we took it there. And Blackstone was saying that our sockets is one alternative in Java.
So it's just another one of the framework specific or platform specific wrapper around how to do things. But
dude, okay, so thinking about your journey, and we've covered things like WPF and WCF and GraphQL, SignalR, GraphQL is kind of ASP.NET MVC, and then also Click Once, which was something new that I hadn't heard about. I am really, actually, since it's in the docs, I'm like, I need to try this, like, or maybe I don't know.
It might be like a wagon, dude. I don't know. You might not be worth diving into anymore.
You say a wagon?
Yeah, like a push cart. I don't know. There's a bunch of there's better ways to like get around town or to carry materials than to like push a wagon around. Like Click Once is pretty old. I don't know. That was a bad reference. I don't even know if I'm just reaching.
I've never heard it.
What's next? What's next? What do we got next?
Okay. Well, so I'm looking at, I think I haven't talked about, and I'm like a little afraid of it, IIRC, because I worry. This is one of those acronyms that I feel like I should know what it means, but I don't. It's like some sort of protocol or something. What? Well, you had IIRC in your list, and I was like, what is that? Is that
I think that was in chat.
Oh,
right?
was it in chat?
Yeah.
Oh, DLLS.
DLLs.
DLLS. Yeah, I made it up. I told IRC was in chat. DLLs? Is that how you say it? Is that
Your
proper?
build artifact. Are those still a thing? You don't have DLLs anymore? I forget. Those .NET produced DLLs.
You do have a build button.
And what happens when you click that? It makes some files. What do those files look like? Okay.
Oh, frick. Hang on. We're gonna pull up one, and then I'm gonna show you. It writes.
I didn't even put things like TFS on there. What else is there? There's some other ones I didn't put on that tweet. I wish I would have.
Why does it tell me? Yeah, sure. Recover. It's like telling me, I guess Visual Studio didn't close properly. I have this really bad habit of walking away from my computer, and then when I come back, I just kind of sleep it from the start screen instead of actually going. Because like that's how I treat my Mac. I'm just like go to sleep.
Go to sleep.
And so my Windows is like, you closed me and you didn't save all this code. And I'm like, yeah, just save it. Like, why are you asking me about this? Like, obviously, I want you to save my code changes.
I mean, I walked away. You got this, right? No.
That's how I really want you to just do it. Yeah. Okay. So it's saying it does write them dynamic link library.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about like, I don't know what the Mac one is, but I'm so, but you don't ever have to really worry about that, right? Because like it builds that, you don't touch that. Then you like leave it in its own little. Are you saying you like would dabble with those files, Justin, or like?
I mean, you had to figure out some stuff at times that was, they used to call it DLL hell. I don't know if that's still a thing.
You really would? But, you'd open up that file and you'd start touching things? That sounds dangerous.
No, like figuring out like, you know, they're like, you know, you have dependencies and things like that. It was just I just, hopefully you won't ever have to experience that.
Well, so I haven't got to the deploying state yet of any of my apps. Okay. Like they're on GitHub and that's as far as I've gotten. So as soon as it's time to like actually package up a build and ship it, we'll see what happens. Yeah. What else? You said what else? Tell me some more things about your journey. Is there any other pieces that we haven't, like chunks that we haven't covered, frameworks that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. So let's see. I did a lot of testing stuff with NUnit.
NUnit
and XUnit.
That one sounds familiar.
I did some training and talks and things like that around unit tests and things like that in the .NET world during the C# days. Yeah.
I'm curious, chat, if you guys used NUnit or XUnit, or if it's still mixing something. Just decompile is nice for that. I use a lot of each day customer issues. Oh. No, is that bad? What's wrong?
No, it's totally fine. It's totally, that's the like, I was excited to take this journey. I didn't know I might come to tears at moments. So I'm a little, there's some pain that's potentially going to come out, you know, that I have to remember these moments of debugging. Mission critical stuff. Yeah. Just decompile.
Oh my God. That's funny.
You ever just decompile somebody else's DLL, third-party DLL, and try and find the problem that you know is on their end and not on your end? And the app is running in production and you kind of got to hurry. And it's like 2 a.m. in the morning.
How do you fix their side of it? Because once you find it, like, you just like call them up and be like, fix this line.
No. You start figuring out how you can wrap their code and insulate their code and manipulate it. That's why you grab just decompile and you get up in that DLL and you try and find what it's doing and you try and find a way to figure out how can I manipulate that, right? And change it to solve what I need to do.
Oh my God, that sounds
we were talking about archaeology the other day on the stream. Yeah, I mean, it's basically it. Except it's 2 a.m. and you got to get things ready for production before 6 a.m. You haven't had any sleep and it's been a long day already. And you had to deal with TFS to do, source code commits and merges before that during the day. So now you're all right.
I
Thanks. I just, You're my therapist for like 2 minutes there. Thanks.
You're like, I've blocked all of this out. Thank you, chat. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely blame Aaron for that one. He said war stories are not always fun times with beers.
The good point is that, and the good thing is that I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not the only one that's taken this journey, right?
That's gone through that. What? Yeah. Okay, you mentioned, was it?
Ooh, EF. Chat said entity framework, EF.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't know what that was short for. Entity framework. Okay, hang on. Entity framework was like, is it like akin to a .NET core? Like that was back in that day? No.
So it's wrapping your, if I remember correctly, it's wrapping your database calls with a ORM. Perfect. Thank you, Eli. I was trying to think of the acronym. Object relational management, I believe. I don't know. Maybe stretching there. But it's basically a way to kind of abstract away your data layer underneath, like what your data source is, and write code agnostic of a data source. Mapper, thanks.
So yeah, AM Green was saying EF.NET Framework or EF Core .NET Core. Okay. Everyone's saying Mapper with you. Object relational mapper. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Yesterday, I told the architect they ruined our favorite feature in VS 2022. What? Does that have anything to do with Mapper, or is that something separate? Okay.
Julie used to be big name doing the entity framework stuff.
Julie.
I believe it's Learman. Learman's last name, Julie Learman.
Ooh.
She showed up at Angular conferences, a couple of them. It was awesome.
Learman?
Yeah. Oh, ooh. Okay. I had an article in the MSDN magazine back in the day.
Ooh, yeah, that's right. Is it still up? Can we find it? Do you have a link?
I think it is. I don't know if it's still relevant. So it was on Ravendb, using Ravendb in ASP.MVC. Anybody know what Ravendb is?
Yeah.
Tell us. I think it's maybe still a thing.
Raven bring up the feels? Oh yeah, maybe. That's how you spell it. Okay. Julie Learman wrote some great books for Entity Framework. And then Eli said that yes, he knows about Raven, Mongo, and .NET. What?
Yeah, pretty much like a non-relational database. And Ravendb was this solution for that. And then it was the .NET heavy solution. And so kind of wrote an article about how to interact or integrate Ravendb with ASP.NET MVC. And that was for the MSDN magazine back in the day. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but that was really cool, print magazine. And Julie was the reviewer on that because she kind of headed up the database section of that magazine at the time.
That is, first of all, this to me just is incredible because it shows me like your depth as a developer. Because I don't know, I've seen you do some really, really cool things like on like front end, and like now I'm like, you wrote what now for a magazine with who? What?
It's all about the years. I've got years underneath my belt, so that's provides the opportunity of time. Really, that's what it is. Just you throw enough years at it, and then these things become part of the journey. And I have a lot of years.
Blackstone said document DB, and Fuel said, "What about Windows Registry? No SQL before all others." Does this make
Windows Registry? I do not want to talk about the Windows Registry.
Maybe you could just tell me what it is.
No. You would install programs and they would write to the Windows Registry like settings and configurations and like a globe. You don't really want to know, do you? Like it was
okay. At least tell me, is it something that is for when you're deploying things, or is it something that's like on your local machine? Like where is it?
Your local machine, right? Like you would install an application and it would write things to the Windows Registry so that it could read it from it's a file system next to it.
Oh my God, yes, I love that. That was like whenever I was trying to debug like this bug I was having, and Stack Overflow was like giving me this list of things to do on my PC, and I was like, I have to go where? Like that's I can imagine being like, oh yeah, the other file system, of course, obviously.
Yeah.
You install both the file system and in the registry. Okay, okay. And then oh God, I was like, how do you read this?
So, you know,
Reg.
people would build applications and then they would put like things like their like license key down in the registry entry so that the app could read it. And then you would just use regedit and find where that was at and the app would
And
run.
steal their key? Like
No, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
I was like, where are you going
Things would
with this,
happen.
black
Like you
hacker?
would, here's what it is. As a developer of a desktop application, if you were writing to the registry, you'd have to think about like, do I want to store things in the registry or not? Right? It's like this global settings. It's like your app has settings, and where do you want to store them? Next to your app, or do you want to put them in the registry? Well, there's this registry, so put them there. And I don't know, it's kind of
So it's more of a Blacksmith was saying it's more of a tree database. No,
it's like soap, dude. It's like soap. I don't know.
Which mess? Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So it's not a thing anymore, or it is a thing?
I don't know. I'm on a Mac
Okay.
right now. I just game on a PC, so I don't know.
I was gonna say you have a PC though. You know how to
I
PC.
do have a PC. I know how to PC. Yeah.
Do you never
I've built
like
PCs.
Oh
I've done.
God. Yeah,
I
like
have a
okay,
PC.
now I find out like you do all ends of software and now you're into hardware. It's too much, Justin.
Yeah, I've done hardware too. I've done
God.
full stack, like kind of everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's where I draw the line. I'm like, I am not picking up a screwdriver.
I draw the line now.
You
back in the day, it's like, well,
you do?
Yeah, I want to try
everything.
and price out video cards and find the right RAM and the motherboard that supports it. And by the way, I need a sound card today. And and then get it all together and it doesn't work. And then no, I'm over those days. But those were days. There were days.
Fuel saying it will never go away from Windows, but it's not used by .NET apps that much anymore. Okay, I see. We've brought up so many like cringe points in the in the programming process.
How about NuGet? We haven't talked about NuGet.
Yeah,
have you started using NuGet
I want you
yet?
to know this is an Alyssa-ism, but I say NuGet because it makes me happy, and it makes also every .netter who I've ever streamed with go like this. I say, oh yeah, your version of npm NuGet, and they're like
yeah, it's funny. I go back to my PHP days. We would do MySQL as a database, and people would say MySQL, and it was always like that same sort of thing. It's like, no, it's MySQL. It says it on the website. On their website, it had a way to pronounce it, right? It's like GIF and GIF. If that had an official website, there would be a pronunciation instructions on top of it. Yes. Right? That's what MySQL had.
Wait, funny. So what is the proper way for is it MySQL?
Well, they used to on the site say MySQL.
SQL. Okay, cool. I didn't.
For MySQL, MY, right? There's MS SQL.
Oh God.
I don't know if that's a thing still, probably.
But you.
Oh yeah, I should database stuff too, by the way. Database stuff as well. Yeah.
And when you say data, what does that mean?
DBA stuff, like create database, manage database, write queries and databases, like the whole shebang. MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Mongo. I've dabbled with that. DocumentDB, Ravendb. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, MS SQL is a thing. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. Is it like? Would you use MS SQL instead of MySQL? Like, is that like a either or type situation happening here?
Yeah. So MySQL. Just kidding. You say however you want. It's just another database product, right? And Microsoft's SQL database was a different product. So.
Okay. And DBA is kind of dead. Is that
database administrator, like somebody that now we have the cloud.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. Everybody, you're just like, I want to spin up a database, boom, right? But back in the day, it would be like, I got to install the database and have a server that it runs on, right? Microsoft server and Windows server or whatever, and all that good jazz. And so, so kind of the management of that stuff is a little bit.
What did you want to say about NuGet? I feel like you had something there. Do you have anything cool there?
Are you in there yet? Like, are you adding packages to your code? Like, it's different from NPM, right?
Oh my God. It's different. Yeah. Like, it's so confusing. So I was like writing my console app on stream, and chat was so amazing. And they were like, hey, this is the library you need. And I was like, cool.
NPM install, right? And you're like,
yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So Visual Studio, and this is the really hard part for me, because Visual Studio has taken care of a lot of things for me. And it was really magical moment for me, because when I got off stream, I was like, I want to add this next thing to my console app. So I kept writing, and because like it's a full-blown IDE. And so it was like, do you mean this method? Do you mean that thing? Did you remember to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I did mean to do that. And oh, I did make that error. And I just like wrote it, and it happened. And I was like, I don't know C#. I just wrote this function. Like, that's awesome. And it was because of the IDE's help. And so I'm kind of like really leaning on it right now, even for things like, oh, I need that library. And so chat was like, yeah, just go. I don't know if it's like, I don't remember what it was called. It was like extensions or something. Go over to that, you type it in, and you're using the IDE to search for it and add it into your project. Now, but I know there's ways to do it, because Layla will come on stream and she'll be like, open up your command prompt and type this thing in, right? And this is where it gets icky, because for instance, I can start like a React app using Visual Studio on this computer, but I cannot use npm or npx or any of that in my command prompt. And so it's very bizarre to me that I have almost these two different ecosystems that aren't aware of each other. Because if I can do something in VS Code on my Mac, that means I have it installed globally on that machine. And so it's very weird for me to be like, oh, like whenever I go and I add that library using NuGet in Visual Studio, I'm not confident on where it is, where it put it, what I'm going to be able to do when I'm outside of Visual Studio. So I still have this very disconnect as a new person in .NET. So I was like, what happens when I leave my IDE? I don't know. Things blow up. Don't do that, right? Like, so.
Right. Yeah. So it's very similar to like NPM, right? And you have like your package JSON file, and you define your dependencies and the version and things like that. So NuGet has the same, from my remembrance, it has the same sort of thing, like a configuration file, and you can define what packages and what versions. And so it's just a like package manager, like chat mentioned, like that's what it's doing, right? It's just, it's the .NET world of package management.
And is it different from NPM and for the fact of like, I know I was talking to my team, and they were frustrated at one point because they were reaching out to the NPM team to try and get certain like data or something from like installs, and like they're not open to that at all as far as like working. Like does NuGet, or not NuGet, sorry, NuGet, does it give that info, or is it more gated than NPM? Like, is there a different like vibe with the ecosystems, or is it pretty much the same, upload anything, download anything, it's just this?
I think its desire is to be similar, right? It's a package manager for the .NET world, or the DLL world, or whatever. But I think that it's, like the vision is to be the same, just a package manager source, and it could be this global thing. And then but then you could also have your own registries, right? You can have your own version of that. That was wow, man, there's a lot. I remember building like a local version of NuGet essentially for company internally.
You did?
To have your own registry. So like, I don't know if you've used like, what is it, like Artifactory or stuff for NPM, and you can have your own like on-prem or your own package manager, and basically.
And you built your own? That's so cool.
Not completely from scratch, but like implementing, like I think like back in the day, they had like, when we were getting NuGet set up, they had like instructions on how to do your own localized version of it or whatever, and go down that road, so that then you're essentially proxying everything. So when somebody goes to install in their app, and the code base that you have, you can set up your registry to be pointing to your local version. And so but then it could like flow through to the external. So like common libraries that are out there in the wild, they can still, go through there. But then if you have your own internal, like we build, a test framework or something, and we don't want to, it's not exposed to the outer world, but we want to install it via the same package management, like via NuGet, right? Because that was the challenge. Like, do you manually bring in these DLLs and then do you reference these other ones from the package manager, or do you have fragmented, or do you bring it all under one hood? And that was the NuGet was this one source to say, like, I'm adding dependencies through that. But then you needed the ability to add local dependencies or dependencies on your network, right?
Eli said, global assembly cache, GAC.
GAC. GAC, GAC, GAC.
And Fuel was saying it brings back memories, not very good ones.
Yeah, lots of journeys.
I love it. No, I honestly, I still feel very, even as I'm, entering .NET, I feel very spoiled for how things are now, because I hear horror stories and I'm like, you had to do what? But I still feel like I want to do what Aaron said. He said, once I wrote a package and registered it, it all came together for me. I feel like I want, like, I'm going to get to that point where, okay, it's time to do that. And I think things will make a little bit more sense, because I'm not there yet, but I want to do that. And I think it will, like, as far as the process. But he was saying GC was the solution to DLL hell. I see. Okay.
I think one of the advantages that you're going to have, that I feel you'll have, is that you come from that world of you're used to these web projects with packages, right, and NPM and things like that. So you're familiar with those concepts, and a lot of it can just be starting, okay, what's the .NET world version of that, right? And you start bridging the gap. And we talked about MVC and the fact that, like, well, that pattern is really similar to what is done in Angular, right? These sort of things you'll start being able to transition. Same way you think about what we went from C# to, like, TypeScript. It's that there's common things that can help that versus coming into it completely green, right? Like, going from PHP to that, like, it's a little bit more challenging to take that journey, right? Yeah.
No, absolutely. And we didn't get to any Blazor code today. I know we're at the top of our time window, but I really loved the conversation, and I learned a lot there. I feel like there's still a lot of different frameworks, languages, buzzwords, like things around .NET that are, a lot of times we'll talk about, oh yeah, that thing's old or it's not used anymore. But you'd be surprised with how many times I'll have, like, a conversation like the one we just had, and then, like, the next day, either in, like, a blog or some docs, like, referencing that, and I'm like, oh, this makes so much more sense versus, I understood 2 words out of that sentence, right? So I think even though it is a long history, sometimes it might be a necessary one to filling in the holes and getting, getting further on my journey. So I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing with us and bringing back all the feels.
Totally. Right. Yeah. Super fun. I love it. There's so many things to talk about, and it's you have these life experiences that you go through, and as you get older, they kind of start fading away. My memory, right? And then, so it's fun to revisit those at times. And then, wow, just, it's amazing how those things just start coming back, right? You mentioned one little word or one little acronym, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm back there in that time, going through that journey again, right? Through it. Which is cool.
Yeah. Eli said, and I love it, I think it's a perfect note to end on, hit F5 and go to lunch.
Right. Let it build. Let it build. We used to say semicolon out. So you're, like, in the middle of typing code and you're like, well, just put a semicolon and I'm out, right? Because you end the line and you're done. So semicolon out was our thing.
Semicolon out. I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much, Justin. And thank you, chat. It was really, really fun. Make sure you swallow. That was like 2 words. Follow Schwarty. I, like, mixed your name and the word follow. Follow Schwarty on the Twitters, and he and I do a stream on Fridays called Angular Air on the YouTube. So check out Angular Air if you're into the Angular world. And have a wonderful, what day is it?
Let me know when you're ready for me to come back on and write some code. I want to hack on some code with you. So
no, I absolutely will. Sure. I'll probably schedule you in December. So look forward to seeing you on again. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.